Cool. Cool. So yeah, maybe I will start it right now. Yes, I should begin. I'll just share my screen now and we'll get started.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody who recently joined.
Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yeah, we can see your slides.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah, sure. So let's begin with Dapr. Thank you guys for joining in. I'll be introducing the building blocks of Dapr, and I just want you to have a slight idea of what this technology is and what you can use this for in your distributed applications. So we'll get started really quick. This is the website for Dapr. You can visit this to know more about it, but I'll be covering the highlights in this presentation. And moreover, you'll notice that there are QR codes on each of the slides. So if you scan those QR codes later on, you may have some additional information like some articles or blogs about what these things are. So keep an eye out for that. So I'll just move ahead. Now, coming to any technology, we first ask the question that why is it needed? Like, why is Dapr there in the first place? So there are a few problems with the way we develop apps currently, and Dapr tries to address them. So one of first of them is having your app built for a specific runtime. For example, if you're building for some environment in your mind, then for building it for another environment, you mostly have to rewrite the large parts of the code. So you don't want to have that. So Dapr allows you to write code once and then run it anywhere, like even on the edge and any platform that you imagine there. Apart from that, you also have a problem of language support. For example, if some component, some part of your app is written in some other languages, for example, different teams working on different languages, working on the same project. So it's very hard, to work to switch languages or, have any sort of collaboration between all this. So Dapr also solves that because you just have a HTTP or gRPC API and you can have any app on top of it. Like it doesn't matter what language you're going to use for it. Apart from that, another very big problem is keeping up with technological standards. For example, if you are heavily invested into one form of, say, for example, if the entire app is built using as one particular practice, for example, if you understand that this is the right way to do it, and if you have to upgrade that methodology, you have to rewrite large parts of your code. So what Dapr does is it allows you to only focus on the business logic and not on how you handle the infrastructure kind of things. For example, if I'm trying to save something into a state store, all of these things will be handled by Dapr. I don't have to worry about what practices to follow in that case. So this is an overview of Dapr, like how it works. So the first layer is the code or the framework. For example, you can choose any of the languages you're comfortable with. And we have SDKs, different libraries for all of these languages. And even if your language is not supported, you can still use the HTTP API to make calls to the Dapr sidecar. Now, looking at the second layer, you see the Dapr building blocks. Like these are what power Dapr services. And you have information like you have services like service invocation, state management, publish, subscribe. We'll be going into details on each of these just in a minute. So I'm just highlighting them over as an overview. And the third layer is the infrastructure. You choose Kubernetes, you can choose your local machine, and also any of their providers like Microsoft Azure or AWS. So there's really no developer, no vendor lock-in, something like that. So it's completely your choice where you want to run it. Now we'll dive deeper into the building blocks and we'll discuss each of these. So service invocation, like this is used, for example, if you're building two different services, say app 1 and app 2, and you want app 1 to access some methods from the app 2. So you can always use this feature, service invocation. What it does is, I'll give examples and we'll see the API in a later slide. But the idea is this, that if you want to call any method or any other service, you can do it very easily using Dapr. Dapr provides your API for that. The second thing is state management. It is similar to that. You don't have to worry about how to configure your, how to connect to your state store. For example, if you're reading Redis or MongoDB, you don't have to worry about how you're going to reach, how your app is going to connect to all of these things. You can always call a Dapr API for that. But there are different methods, for example, save, delete, and save in batches and all those things. So you can just use those to get a job done. Then there's publish and subscribe facility. So if you notice that service invocation and PubSub both are there. So if you want direct messaging, you can use service invocation. For example, if you want to directly call another service, or if you just want to release asynchronous messages across different services, you can use publish and subscribe functionality. Again, it's very simple. We'll look at how we can achieve that in a few later slides. Apart from that, we have resource bindings. So resource bindings are there to make your tasks easier. For example, if you want to get some, if you have to get messages or incoming input from some trigger, for example, Twitter or some other places, you can always use resource bindings. So these are used to connect to external services. For example, Twitter, as I mentioned, there are multiple others, like there's a host of different components. We have Kafka and other things as well. We'll look into that later. Virtual actors, it is something that I won't discuss in this presentation because it is like we have to understand the actor scheme again to make sense of what it does, what Dapr does. But if you're familiar with what actors are, you should know that Dapr also provides a different API for actors to make your job easy. Observability, it is like any app which you build should have some way to track what calls are being made, so that when you're debugging your application, you know that where to look in which part of the code to modify. So Dapr has observability built in, like you don't have to write additional code to track your calls. What Dapr does is it adds a lot of metadata to all of your calls. So for example, if calling service 1 is calling service 2, then in the call itself, there will be a lot of information about who the caller is and where the call is directed to, what protocol is being used. So all of these things are automatically tracked, and you can view them on Grafana or any dashboard you want. Apart from that, there are also logs. Like you can observe the logs for every app. Like every service that you're running has its own logs. So any information that comes in or goes out of the service will have all of the information in this log. Like we'll be seeing in demo how that thing works. And then there's secrets. Like secrets is a very important part of any application. For example, if you're having a Redis instance and you want to store the password to the Redis instance, so you must use secrets instead of directly writing those into your configuration files like YAML files. So all of this is also very easily provided by secrets. You just have a URL to call and you get your secrets. We'll be looking more into that. Yeah. So first, how does Dapr achieve all of these things? We have heard that Dapr can allow you to just simply make a call and it will connect to another service. So how does it actually do it? So the main idea behind this is having a sidecar to every application. For example, here you can see service code A. So service code is, imagine that this is one service, like A service, and the other is this is a B service. Now, in a very traditional approach, you won't have any sidecar here. You just have two applications, and then you'll be communicating between these two using your own encryption and whatever protocols you wish to employ. In Dapr's case, what we do is we deploy a sidecar. Like it is in Kubernetes, if you are familiar with pods, then it means that in a particular pod, we deploy two containers. So they share the same network namespace, not the namespace, but the network. So what happens here is like every service gets a sidecar attached to it. And now this service only needs to interact with this Dapr sidecar. It doesn't need to directly interact with state stores, publish, or any other resource bindings. So you just call a Dapr API. You know what port this Dapr instance is running on your particular pod, and then you call the Dapr API. Now every other task will be handled by this sidecar itself. So if you're trying to communicate with another service, so this sidecar will know that this service has this particular sidecar. So it can communicate, the Dapr sidecars communicate between themselves, and then the service code needs just to call a Dapr API and connect to its own sidecar. So it's also secured with MTLS encryption, so it's pretty fast. And more, if you look at the resource bindings, you'll see that you can also call resource bindings your state stores and publish and subscribe facilities. So you don't have to directly incorporate any of these code into your particular service. For example, if I'm currently using Redis and I want to switch my implementation to Cosmos DB. So in a traditional approach, what I've done is I would replace code in my service which deals with the Redis part, and we have to replace it with the Cosmos DB SDK. So in this case, you don't have to do that. You can just change the component file. You have a configuration file, so you just have to change the name of the configuration file, and Dapr will automatically start sending a request to Cosmos instead of Redis. So it's a very, very convenient way to allow your application to be independent of any particular service. So this is the entire architecture of how Dapr achieves it. Now we'll go into seeing how you can deploy this particular sidecar. As I already mentioned, in Kubernetes, you need to just add some annotations to your particular deployment. So if you add all these annotations, then Dapr has another pod running which looks for all these annotations in any new resources that you create. So it will find that, okay, this deployment has all these annotations enabled. So it will attach a sidecar on its own. So this is for Kubernetes. And when you're deploying it on your own machine, like standalone machines, the Dapr run command does this similar job for you. So if you run Dapr run and you specify all of these parameters, so Dapr will know that it has to attach some sidecar to this particular app. So this is how sidecars can be created. Yeah, now we'll get into some more detail about each of these different building blocks. So this is the state management building block. So as I already mentioned, you just need to call a particular URL. So here the URL in question is localhost 3500 and all this. So 3500 is the port number of the Dapr sidecar for this particular service. So my service, my app will also have a Dapr sidecar along to it. And that sidecar is running on the 3500 port. That is the default one. So what this service does is I'll just call this particular URL from my code. I'll show it in the demo as well. So I'll just call this particular URL at this port. And then this is the part which you need to focus on. Currently, I'm trying to get some key value from store, right? So what I'll do is after version 1, I'll put state. So you need to observe this particular thing. Whenever you're switching to different building blocks, the only thing that changes is the endpoint you're calling. So right now, since I need to get some key value, so I'll just call state. Then I specify what the state store name is. So you can have multiple state stores with different names. I'll show you the configuration file in a minute in the next slide. So what I'll do is I'll click on state, then state store, and then the name of the key. This is the get request. So I just need to call this endpoint from my service, and Dapr will take this request, get to the state store, and bring the value of the particular key that is planned. And similarly, you can also post with the same theory. Now we'll see that how you can configure all of these things. So if you want to have a state store, like this is the configuration file for the state store. You only need to mention state.mongodb. If I wanted a Redis version, I would just mention state.redis. So that's all you need to change if you're trying to switch vendors. So you have to specify this a component and it's a CopDB name, and this is the state that you're going to use. And again, just since you already mentioned this, if you want to get a particular key, you can just call v1 state/copdb, copdb being the name of this particular component. And all of this IPA is supported by Dapr in this case. So once that is done, we can talk about service discovery invocation. Similar idea, you just need to call a particular URL. And in this case, instead of state, we're going to call invoke. The invoke will be invoking some method from some other service. For example, here app1 and here's app2. So from app1, if I call this particular URL, there's a small correction. Like instead of cart, I should have written app2 because I'm going to call the app2 a method checkout from app2. So I just write invoke and then the name of the app from which I have to invoke the method, and then the keyword method. And after that, checkout is the name of the method which I want to call from this particular service. So that's all I need to do. Just it's all about calling Dapr APIs, and you don't have to worry about what the IP address of the service is or the DNS name or anything like that. All of this is handled by Dapr itself. And yeah, similarly, we also publish and subscribe. You just need to change the keyword here. Now it's publish. You can send a post request, specify what topic you want to publish your message to, and the data idea. And similarly, also just subscribe to particular, any particular topic, and then you can receive messages directly into your application. Subscribing is we have different ways to subscribe. I'll just go over them very quickly later on. Yeah, this is another component file, and you have to look that the only thing which changes is the type. Here I'm saying pubsub.redis. That means that I'm using a Redis instance and it's employed as a pubsub. So that's the only thing I need to change, and then I just add some other host password and allow topics. And again, the API might seem familiar, like v1 publish orders is the name of the pubsub which you are deploying, and process is the name of the topic. And this is the way you publish messages to a particular topic. When you want to receive them, you have two ways. Either you just create a subscription YAML. For example, you're creating a subscription component here, and you just specify that, okay, this is the topic I want to subscribe to, and this is the route in which I want to receive those messages. And which apps are going to be subscribers can be mentioned in scopes. Like if I want app1 and app2 to be subscribers of, say, the Death Star status topic, I can just create a subscription and deploy it. That will be done. The other method which we can take is a programmatic method. Like you can have this particular code inside your application, where what happens is you need to send Dapr the name of your pubsub, the topic, and the route at a endpoint Dapr/subscribe. So whenever your app is run, Dapr will send requests to this particular endpoint to see which apps want to become subscribers. So when you send this particular information back to Dapr, it will understand, okay, your app wants to receive messages from this particular topic. And then I'll just create another, that particular endpoint where I'm going to receive messages and I'm going to display it. So that is the entire idea of pubsub. Yeah, and the resource bindings, as I already mentioned, is simple. You just need to change the endpoint. I'll just move over really quickly from this because it's not really that important. And again, you have to see that there are a lot of options that you have. You can just change a particular name in a configuration, and you can employ all of these different interoperable bindings. It's really helpful with that. And secrets already mentioned secrets. In this case, the keyword changes to secrets. The vault is the name of your secret, and my secret is the name of your particular whatever secret you're trying to store there. So just very basic, the same thing. If you understand any of the single building blocks, you'll have an idea of all of them. It's just like not too much of a problem. Yeah, and also I mentioned metrics and all these things. So it's already built in, as already mentioned, and you can employ any of these things, Prometheus, Azure, Monitor, to know like how your app is performing, all of that. Yeah, so these are the SDKs. These are languages and framework for which you have some SDKs already built for Dapr. So you can just call methods from this particular libraries. And even if that is not the case, you can just have the URL and make HTTP call or gRPC call. Yeah, so moving to the demo really quickly. So what I've built is there's one service which is called controller. Another service is the event service. Another is the messaging service. So the idea is this, that I want to create a calendar and I want to create events, delete events, and send messages when new events are created. So what I'm doing is I'm building a controller here. It has all of these three functions specified, like creating, deleting, and sending messages. So it interacts with the Dapr API through the Dapr sidecar. And this sidecar is responsible for sending all of these different requests to different services. For example, if I want to create an event, the sidecar will send a message to the Go service. Like all of these services are in different languages. Controller is in Node.js, event services in Go, messaging is in Python. So just to understand that you can choose any language and you can also work together a single app. So if I want to create an event, Dapr sidecar will send my request to another sidecar, which has a service code in Go. And then it interacts with the Redis state store to store any event information that you have. And the second thing is when you're creating a new event, it will also send a message. And now messaging will be handled by the Python code. And this particular service interacts with the Dapr sidecar to send email ID to all those people who are involved in the event through SendGrid. So yeah, I'll just go over to the presentation really quick, demo really quickly. Are there any questions so far? Like anybody has any doubts they want to have cleared, something like that, before I jump into the code? Cool. Then there's no doubts, I guess. See, I'll just really go over to the code really fast and see. This is the invoke URL which I already talked about. I just defined the URL in my code, and then when I'm going to whenever I have a new event endpoint, I'll just call this invoke URL and with the add event endpoint. Now what this will do is it will go over to the Go events file where I've defined the add event endpoint here. This is the add event endpoint. Now this interacts with the Redis state store to store whatever information you're sending from the controller. So what it'll do is it'll just create a key value pair and then it is going to post it to the state URL. Now the state URL is already, as I mentioned before, is nothing but the local host version 1 state and the name of your state store. This is it. So this is how a JavaScript controller interacts with a Go file. And once that is done, you also have a send notification data. And this is the part which publishes messages to the particular topic. So if you look at this particular part of code, I have a publish URL and I'm posting this particular information at the publish URL. And the publish URL is, as we discussed before, is just that particular version and then the publish endpoint. And now the messages needs to be a subscriber. So as I mentioned, we had two methods. Now I'm employing the programmatic method here. I'm sending this particular information to Dapr at this endpoint. Whenever Dapr calls this endpoint, I'll send all this information there. So Dapr knows that okay, the messages application is a subscriber. And now this is the endpoint which I have. And I'll just take whatever information is sent by the node controller into the messages and I keep it there. And then I'll call this send email functionality. And this one will interact with the output binding, the SendGrid, and will send all the information to whatever email ID you want sent it to. For example, this is the request data. I'm specifying the email and the subject, and I'm also adding the data here. And then I'll just call the binding URL, like it is similar to that as we already discussed. We'll just change the keyword to bindings, and then I'll click on SendGrid. SendGrid is the name of my component. And then we'll just post it to SendGrid and have like the entire email things. And if you look here, you'll find the component which I described. The pubsub.yaml is simple. I just mentioned pubsub.redis. I'm using a Redis app instance for this. SendGrid is similar. We just need to change the name of it and specify what binding it is. Like it's a Twilio branding and the name is SendGrid. And state store is similar. You just need to mention state.redis, something like that. So whenever you want to run this thing, you just click on your terminal and you just run this particular command, Dapr run. Like this will open HTTP port at 3500 for Dapr. and it will open the app at 3000. So I just run this thing, and you see that it just starts off, and you also have all the logs which whenever you receive any request or something, all the logs will be appearing here on this particular part. So you don't have to worry about any of these things. And similarly, I can start the other services, and then I can post requests and all these things. So I'll just maybe go over to my screenshots to show you how all this works, because running it might take time. Just give me a second. Yeah, so if I'm trying to post any new event, what I'll do is I'll click on localhost 3000/new event. So what this does is I'm calling the new event endpoint at 3000 port where my app is, and I'll specify the name, date, and ID in the body. So what it does is it just sends an event to the controller, the Node.js controller. So when you have this, after that, the Node.js will also have the logs here. So it will tell you that, okay, I've received this particular name, uninstall event, and all these things. And it has sent it to the Go. So it's telling the data passed as body to Go is this. So whatever, this is information which I'm passing to the Go service. Now the Go service acknowledges that, okay, it has received such a thing. Like the Go will tell that I have received the name being this, date being this, and it is trying to persist the state. It will contact the Redis state store and will send it to all this information to Redis. And it sends an acknowledgement back to the node controller, and it says successfully persisted state. So this is how it, you can work across different languages, and I don't have to worry about how to configure Redis. I don't even have to worry about the library or the SDK for Redis. I just need to use Dapr in this case. And even if I want to change the Redis implementation to MongoDB, I'll just switch in the configuration, and I won't have to worry about replacing any of the code or SDK. This is how simple it is. So this is the entire idea. I hope I was able to cover, a large part of Dapr, but there is plenty more. Like whenever you think about it, there's a lot of things which you can experiment on. You can try to go ahead. You can explore the website, and also you can try to look at my better. You can look at the Dapr samples repository. It has a lot of different samples available, so you can get a hang of how each of the different building blocks work. It was a very short idea which I presented, but there are significantly large amount of things you can explore in this sector. So that will be it, I guess, Sarah.
That was great. Thanks, Jayed.
Thank you so much.